Good afternoon, teacher Diana. This video is intended for the class Language, Society and Culture, as unfortunately there was not enough time to present to every one of our mates this mind map. So the article that was intended to be analyzed is Critical Interculturality, a path for pre-service ELT teachers. The reference is from Granados Beltran. It was originally published in Medellin City to the Icala magazine. We can find it in the 21 volume. The first part about this article tells us about the introduction to a critical interculturality. This makes the contrast with the ELT zones all over the world and those places where native teachers work. So, the text aims to restructure the teacher education program based over the notion of critical interculturality, this proposed by Carter and Walsh. So we will further explain more about these critical interculturality notions. Going through the next subtitle that appears in the text is about the decolonial term, acknowledging the subaltern. So we are going to go deep in this concept. So this decolonial term is a line of thought developed by Latin and Caribbean countries to change the idea to a community based in subaltern conditions. As we know, it's important to have in mind that all relationship of politic and even language and cultural notions comes to America specifically under the European influence of the conquest times. So nowadays everything needs to be with these kind of situations that happened 500 years ago, and even also we passed through independence and nation creation is quite a lot of things that we have right now. So this needs to be talks about the exploitation that underlines over the language imposition, that is a cultural notion, and the social class establishment economically. We saw that, by instance, the indigenous people was in the lower parts of class of society, and so on was the noble, and finally the Spanish people that although they were not born here, that they was the one who make the rules and stuff. Another place from this big cloud that was the subject is the heightened negation or dismay of colonialism factors caused the incidents and steals in nowadays life. As mentioned before, the understanding of this issue is quite complex and still having a lot of incidents in the political life now. So this is go on. Two concepts important to clarify. It's about coloniality, that is the current vestiges of cultures as we see, by instance, the language that we use in Colombia, and colonialism, that is the influence of the some foreign people of foreign countries that incurs in the changes to the dominant country. We can see here a support of an image, looking out for the Latin American countries, also South America, part of North America, that is go from Mexico to Argentina, and it's all about this. All these places was conquered by European conquerors, and so on, developed language. We can see here the little exception, that is the three Guyanas, whose relation is closer to Europe than South America due to its language and political situations. So okay, going on, the next title is about the critical interculturality. This is the path to overcome coloniality. By recognizing cultural diversity, ultimately, that is striving for tolerance and inclusion, Also influenced by policies that neoliberal are cut controlling diverse groups and causing conflicts because of exploitation. We can see here that is actually quite an important thing about the relationship of armored groups in Colombia and the conflict against the Colombian state. Okay, they so on going into further this. Tell us about the critical interculturality. This is a work to the economical, ethical, political project aiming to change and transform institutional and social relations. As we see, and as mentioned before, there is a lot of inconvenience that comes from conquest epoch, and that can be managed to change all the relationships. Okay, going on in this critical interculturality, we can see here a little bit map of the influence of African slaves brought to America, and we can see here to the Caribbean and even to the south of the north and east of South America. There was brought several, almost 6% of African people, of these black people that undoubtedly had contributed a lot to our culture, as well make a mix about these mestizo people that lives in Colombia. Okay, going through the next step here, we can see that a call for epistemic break in English learning. Several countries depends on West knowledge construction based on foreigner. Urge construction of proper bilingual plan, criticizing local academics. As this is important to clarify, there is a notion about the native speakers going to be a better teachers of English language, think that I consider completely wrong, as we understood that the language has a social and economical factors that inside into the the language teaching. So maybe for the Colombo American Institute it's better to have an English or Australian teacher, but the thinking about culture and teaching about the real meaning of the use of language, I think they overcome this step and causing this. So this is a call for the government and the society as well to change all this situation of the nativization of the language, the preference for them, and to work in a real and effective context of the bilingual lesson plan. That I think that is something that Colombia needs to work a lot in. Keeping on in these coloniality and colonial teacher development programs, we can see that as I mentioned before, the hegemonic idea of native speakerism had a impact in Colombian context. So some students will be maybe criticized before to not to have the sound of a native speaker, and I think that is quite a trouble, as we have so multicultural and a lot of different cultures and towns in our English classrooms. I think maybe a native teacher won't going to comprehend this factor, and we as Colombian teachers need to be very, very aware of how our students is going to be learning this language of English. Maybe a student from the north coast of Colombia, we're going to have a very different accent from one to the center of the country, by instance Bogota or Cundinamarca region. So that is something that we must be very aware, watching out from these native teachers. They are not our enemy, of course. It's actually such a great help in our system, but I think that we need to rethink this system and what we are really teaching to our students. Well, our next subtitle about this is decolonial pedagogy and language teacher development. And this talks about the discussion of the theories establishing the decolonial pedagogy and how they emphasize on the political dimension in education. As a reflection about this, I prepared in the map of a question for our mates, but well, as they are not here, I'm thinking going to respond about it. So what happens with us, individuals who beyond being subjects who beyond being teachers are also subjects? What do we language teachers ask ourselves as members of Colombian society? Well, these questions need to be responded asking ourselves about what we are teaching and what for are we teaching to our children. The context in Colombia demands that is also in our constitution, the the mixing and the help and aid from Caribbean and Latin American countries. This is a country blessed by its ubication that is just along the northwest side of the South American country. We have coasts in Pacific and Atlantic Ocean, the only country in South America that has. And I think that is about it. What we can give to students and what we can share them to help them to apply or dismiss these colonial situations that is still going on under our relationships as political, economical, and situational. Well, as a part of the appendix of the set in text is the recognition of the other and his or her different culture, realizing the acceptance of the other as an equal who belongs in the same field, as has capacity to play the same game and play it well. As always told in the school for Colombia, we are the same, although we are so different. Colombian culture is a mix of several cultures as indigenous, European or African, that make his way to develop itself here. So I think that the recognition of the other and his support to the culture is very important, and it's something that cannot be dismissed. So, by recognizing experiences formed by students and how do they see the world, teachers set a peer cultural class for knowledge construction, including cultures, topics, projects, and languages. Maybe I dream with a Colombia that has not any kind of envy among its regions, and to set up the real context of the topics and projects, we need to manage how to make it and how to support and apply these kind of situations to our teacher life. Well, to end this, the conclusion, as said in text, teachers to recognize themselves as professionals who are able to construct rather than consume. I found very important this sentence, as told us that we need to build, we need to construct all the relationship in our classes to make effectively a place for our students in the world. What are going to do in this globalization world? How will they manage their social relations in the proximate world? What are going to do, and what we are doing as teachers to potentialize this question, this aspect. Okay, the next one is strengthening literacy. Future language teachers need to be aware of their role as public intellectuals. I found this sentence very interesting and very applicable to our context, as we are, technically scientists of the language. As we teach and all we say, I'll need to have to, clarify all these concepts. But simply, we need to be aware about our public managing role. What we are teaching to our children, to bear in mind or to have in mind, what are they going to be in this world? What will be they doing? So I think that's enough for this video. I hope to be clear in the concepts, and that's it, teacher Diana. So I hope to see you at the next Tuesday. So thank you for listening to this video.